In November, 15 Asian Pacific countries signed the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. RCEP is the world's biggest free trade deal, with members accounting for 28% of global GDP and 2.2 billion people. The United States is not part of RCEP, widely seen as the Beijing-backed alternative to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a regional trade deal proposed by the Obama administration that excluded China. 12 countries signed the TPP in 2016 before President Donald Trump withdrew from it in 2017.
They won't totally determine all trade or anything like that, but those agreements will create certain features that will probably be potentially very commercially significant for how businesses trade cross borders.
President-elect Joe Biden has pledged not to enter trade agreements until the U.S. makes investments in its workers and infrastructure, but he has signaled he will work with allies on trade.
So that we can set the rules of the road instead of having China and others dictate outcomes because they are the only game in town.
Biden's multilateral approach would be a departure from the outgoing president, who prefers bilateral negotiations in line with his America First trade agenda. In 2018, Trump signed a revised free trade agreement with South Korea and a limited trade deal with Japan in 2019. But the centerpiece of his trade policy is the tariff war with China.
We have 25% on $250 billion worth of goods. And then we're bringing the 10% down to 7.5% on $300 billion worth of goods plus.
Trump has also targeted Chinese tech firms, including Huawei, saying the phone producer will spy for Beijing. He has succeeded in convincing Britain and several other small European countries to exclude Huawei from their next-generation 5G networks. But Trump's moves have not lowered the overall U.S. trade deficit with China, which has grown during the pandemic after falling in 2019.
I think it's questionable how effective this just being tough has been when there hasn't been a clear way forward.
The U.S. and China signed a Phase 1 trade deal in January, with Beijing agreeing to ramp up purchase on American goods and services, including an additional $36.5 billion of agricultural products. China is unlikely to meet this year's target. With the COVID-19 crisis in his early months, Biden will likely focus on immediate measures, including vaccine distribution and economic recovery. But the strained U.S.-China relationship is expected to continue.
The relationship is going to get increasingly competitive, irrespective of who's leading both countries. The question is whether the leadership at the top can exercise some control over historical events and can behave reasonably and pragmatically.
Any moves by Biden to ease the tariffs would face significant congressional opposition, especially since there is a bipartisan consensus over a tougher approach to contain the rise of China. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Washington.